Welcome to today's explainer. Look, if you've been feeling just utterly exhausted at work lately, like you're constantly swimming upstream, moving a million miles an hour, but somehow never actually getting ahead, you are definitely not alone. It's a phenomenon we call performative busyness. And I want to be really clear right off the bat, it is not a personal failing. Today, we're diving deep into post-noise leadership in an era of synthetic reality to unpack exactly why this is happening and, more importantly, how the most effective leaders are completely shifting their paradigms to survive it. To immediately validate that burnout you're feeling, let's look at this staggering number. Between 2020 and 2024, the pace of organizational change accelerated by 183%. I mean, think about that. We are just dealing with a temporary disruption here. We've entered what researchers are calling the Great Acceleration. Legacy systems are unraveling, complexity is totally exponential, and the primary existential threat to an organization today, it's no longer a lack of information. It's a catastrophic deficit of attention. Let's break down where that attention actually goes. Right now, modern knowledge workers are spending a massive 28% of their week just managing email. Add another 20% simply searching for basic information. That leaves barely half of their capacity for the deep, core work that actually drives value. We're trapped in this fractal of distraction. We're checking our devices nearly 100 times a day, and every single one of those interruptions triggers a task-switching cost that severely degrades our cognitive output. Simply put, our attention is literally being stolen from us. So here is our roadmap for this explainer. It's basically a survival map. First, the Great Acceleration. Second, your brain on noise. Third, the synthetic trust crisis. Fourth, the coherent leader. And finally, we'll wrap up with the signal protocol. All right, part one, the Great Acceleration. This is all about the collapse of deterministic control. When traditional hierarchical control starts failing, our default human reaction is to fall into a trap called performative business. It's exactly what it sounds like. We start drowning in trivial updates and microtasks, mistaking the constant management of daily friction for actual strategic advancement. We just try to do more. But here's the thing. When we treat every single incoming email, ping, or stimulus as a top priority, we completely annihilate our organizational compass. We end up moving very, very fast, but going absolutely nowhere. Moving on to part two, your brain on noise. Let's dig into the neuroscience of the threshold. The brutal truth is that our brains are simply mismatched for the high-velocity demands of this post-noise era. We basically have two interacting networks that govern our attention. First, there's the Salience Attention Network, or SAN. This operates completely unconsciously. It's essentially your brain's bottom-up spam filter, constantly scanning for threats or important stuff. Then you have the Executive Attention Network, or EAN. That's your conscious, goal-directed focus. So what's the problem? Well, constant digital microstressors completely exhaust your SAN's filtering capacity. And when the spam filter breaks, your highly energy-intensive EAN is forced to process all that irrelevant noise, which rapidly drains your executive cognitive reserves. When that endless noise exhausts our filters, it triggers an absolute amygdala hijack. Your prefrontal cortex is your executive center. It handles the heavy lifting, like strategic planning and complex problem solving. But when cognitive overload hits, it literally severs the neural connection to that prefrontal cortex. Your brain's primitive emotional alarm system, the amygdala, takes over the driver's seat. You instantly shift from deliberate, rational calculation straight into reactive, emotional survival mode. At that point, you physically cannot think strategically. And staying in that state of sustained decision-making in a noisy environment triggers decision fatigue. This isn't just feeling tired. It's a massive, metabolically expensive 50% drop in your deliberate reasoning capacity. And it manifests in some predictably destructive biases. Present bias leads to endless firefighting just to get immediate relief. Status quo bias paralyzes us with a fear of risk. Certainty hunger has us demanding endless reports, which just causes analysis paralysis. And heuristic reliance means we blindly repeat past mistakes. You are basically trying to navigate a Category 5 hurricane with a completely broken compass. Which brings us to part 3, the synthetic trust crisis, the weaponization of our truth default state. Because the noise isn't just distracting anymore, it's actively deceptive. We are talking about the era of AI and deepfakes. Deepfakes are so dangerous because they perfectly mimic 3 foundational human trust heuristics: familiarity, authority, and social proof. They use recognized faces, they exploit our deep conditioning to obey senior leadership, and they completely fabricate consensus. By combining these triggers with manufactured urgency, Deepfakes deliberately bypass irrational scrutiny and completely incapacitate that already tired prefrontal cortex we were just talking about. Okay, here is the genuinely terrifying part. Humans cannot reliably detect deepfakes. The idea that we can just train ourselves to spot pixel anomalies is a total illusion. Neurocognitive EEG studies reveal something incredibly dark. Even when our subconscious brain actually flags a deepfake as incongruous, like it knows something is off, our conscious brain overrides it. Our deeply ingrained seeing as believing instinct is so strong that it causes us to still rate fake statements from authority figures as completely trustworthy. So, how do we survive this? That brings us to part 4, the coherent leader. It is time for a major paradigm shift. This entirely new, highly deceptive reality means we absolutely have to transition our operating model. Reactive leadership is driven by the ego's anxious desire to control everything. When faced with noise, a reactive leader centralizes authority. They micromanage, and they demand absolute certainty, which just creates massive, suffocating bottlenecks. Coherent leadership, on the other hand, relies on presence and clarity. It's the capacity to align with reality rather than fighting against it. The coherent leader cultivates a high signal-to-noise ratio by delegating the how, fiercely guarding the why, and fostering deep psychological safety. One of the defining traits of a coherent leader is mastering what we call decision velocity. The magic number here is 70%. In a rapidly accelerating environment, waiting for perfection is deadly. Coherent leaders act boldly the second they hit that 70% confidence threshold. They know for a fact that if they wait for 100% certainty, sure, the data will be absolutely perfect, but it's going to arrive far too late to be contextually relevant. Finally, part 5, the signal protocol. Let's get into some highly practical frameworks you can use right away. First things first, we have to aggressively defend the neural core. You need strict attention boundaries. Number 1, deep work zones. Try mandating 90-minute blocks of asynchronous, completely uninterrupted focus time across your entire team. Number 2, value-tiered stop-doing lists. You have to ruthlessly eliminate or delegate tasks that operate below your highest contribution zone. And number 3, micro-recovery rhythms. Implement simple things like the Pomodoro technique to prevent that brutal glucose depletion in your brain's executive centers. Next up, you need to anchor a shared reality through living culture and rituals. A simple, stoic evening review builds the metacognition that leaders need to stay grounded. Operational gratitude, which is just simple peer-to-peer recognition, is actually an incredible biological hack. It physically triggers the release of oxytocin in the brain, which is the neurochemical foundation of trust. And a 3-speed rhythm cleanly separates your long-term annual planning from your rapid weekly execution, which naturally accelerates that decision velocity we just discussed. Now, think about how powerful it is to explicitly tell your team this. If I ever ask for something urgent and sensitive, I expect you to verify my identity. Slowing down to verify is not insubordination, it is operational excellence. This is the essence of safe-to-challenge security. When you actively dismantle the toxic elements of hierarchical authority and actually reward your employees for verifying requests, you build a powerful behavioral immunity against synthetic AI deception, which leaves us with a final, absolutely vital question to ponder. Are you shouting over the noise, or are you the stillness from which the true signal emerges? Let's face it, the noise of the world is only going to grow louder and more complex from here on out. Your job is no longer to fight the fractal nature of reality or to try and build a taller tower of control. Your true operational superpower right now is becoming a sanctuary of coherence. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I truly hope this helps you find your signal in the noise.